think I just want to talk about the sisterhood.
I love it.
Right? Because that is how we're connected.
Yeah.
Through Rhiannon Giddens,
Yes.
who is a dear friend and collaborator to both of us.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of watching you through your collaboration with her. That's how I first became aware of your work.
And how I first became aware of your work as well. Yeah.
But I remember watching when you were doing, when you were on the road with our native daughters.
Yeah.
And that was a lot. There were small children.
6.
Yes.
6 small children.
There were buses. I had a coffee with Rhiannon one day here in the city, and she was just,
describing the complete
the chaos,
entropy and chaos of that tour.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was beautiful.
It was incredible. So it is really interesting, like how we find one another. But that comes down to, I think, how intense tokenism has been within the industry, especially for those of us who are moving in so-called genre that was not seen as for us, whether that be classical or folk roots, Americana country.
Yes.
Where we were just more isolated.
It's so true.
So, finding now it's changing more rapidly, I think, and for the better.
Well, there is power in numbers.
There is, yeah.
Last night, it's so funny that we're talking about this today. Last night, I was at Ravinia in Chicago, and I was doing a program of music by Black women.
So amazing.
Classical composers.
Amazing. I
From
wish I could
100 years
have been
ago,
there.
1930s. It was beautiful. I didn't get any sleep because we stayed so long and we were having such conversations with the audience. But I was talking about exactly this, about the sisterhood and how none of this work would have happened had it not been for the connections, for the friendships, for the mentoring and the, holding each other up. But I think that the big difference then was that you were doing this work simply to get in the door, simply to be able to do the work.
Yeah.
You didn't even have space to do the work for the purpose of amplifying the work of others, of, bringing others into the conversation. So that is a tremendous privilege.
And I also feel like it has been, I know that the entire sort of extractive, abusive model of divide and conquer, false scarcity, there's only room for one of you, there's only this, that has been a narrative that in the past people have been trapped by, and I think we're finally having these conversations. That's an absurd narrative. It's a false premise to begin with.
Yes.
There's not a limited attention span for the work of Black women.
Right.
There's not a limited audience for the work of Black women. You can play more than one Black woman on the radio back to back.
Right. That's right.
More than one woman, period,
Yes.
of whatever
Yes.
heritage.
Yes.
Back to back.
Yes.
But it was so, I feel like it was so intense for so long of brainwashing artists into thinking they were in competition with each other instead of in community with each other. Right. That it was a difficult thing to form circles before, because that's where the power is. I mean, divide and conquer is to keep us weak.
Exactly. But the circles, I think, happened in private.
They happened in private anyway. Exactly.
They happened in the living room and around the kitchen table, around the piano.
Yeah.
I think more and more I realize all the micro levels at which none of this happens without each other.
Exactly.
From who holds the baby to who you can call when you just need some encouragement, to who has done a thing so that that you see it and you think I can do it too.
Yeah.
Your life, your music has changed so much in these last, 5 years, I think?
Well, I mean, Outside Child came out 2 years ago. So.
But before that, though, touring with
Native Daughters. That was in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first Our Native Daughters tour. And that was a huge shift to do that.
Yes.
And
I'm curious about the progression of that, sort of the awareness, the confidence, the community. How did that build for you to give you the courage for the first solo album? And
yes. I mean, I think that's because of the circumstances of my childhood as a survivor of very severe childhood abuse, it just took me a lot longer to step into my own name and my own power in a public way. It didn't feel safe to do that for a very, very long time.
So the first album, Outside Child, incredibly personal. I think people use the word courage a lot when they talk about sharing trauma. I tend not to see it that way because I think it's a necessity.
Necessity, survival.
It is.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you deeply.
Yeah.
It's survival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that accomplishing that has made the rest possible for you.
It's opened so many doors that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And that continues to be, it's surprising to me still in many ways. Mm-hmm. I'm deeply grateful. Mm-hmm. And I'm just in it. It hasn't really, the last 2 years have been a very intense learning curve and stepping into curatorial role, stepping into producer role, continuing, writing and co-producing and finishing a whole new record that's coming out September 8th and working on a memoir and getting signed to a book deal by Flatiron Books. I mean, just all of it has been yes. What is even going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm still I haven't fully processed even everything that's happened, but it was life-changing.
Yeah. And you can expand. You expand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about Brandi Carlile and some of the women who have stepped in and, fairy godmothered you.
Yes, yes.
Which, again, what power to, what a gift to be able to do that.
Yeah. Again, we met in circle at festivals.
Yeah.
At different, and a huge shout out to the folk and roots and Americana scene that has fostered, the artists like Rhiannon, like Brandi and I, like you, who fall between the cracks of genre, and who were not welcomed into a lot of the kind of more established, I don't know what you would call it, like any kind of sort of pop or mainstream commercial music arena until very recently. Of course, Brandi's breaking through now, Rhiannon's breaking through now, but it took 20 years,
Yeah.
Overnight. 20 years later.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and yet I see it as the strongest community. The music lovers who congregate in these
because it's not subject to to the sort of to the shifting trends of whatever is popular.
Right.
It really is this it's not based on kind of commercial value. It's not based on sales, it's not based on who's trending, who's charting, it's music lovers, and it's a bunch of nerds, and it's the greatest thing ever. Like I'm a proud nerd, Rhiannon and Leyla and Amythyst and I joke about that. Like it just took us a while to find each other.
No, I watch in admiration and envy because the energy around folk festivals to me, it's something. It's something that every other genre would like to duplicate. It's not possible because you're right. It just goes deep, and it's just
and it's a labor of love, and it's built. It's a barn builder. It's built by the circle, by the community. It's only ever been the circles for me.
I sometimes wonder if you eliminated all the doors that you've knocked on and all the desks you've sat at, trying to explain yourself and trying to look for that approval that's not going to come because they don't get it.
They can't see us.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's a necessary part of the effort or, did we just need to not do that from the beginning and really just work with our people and our friends and our family?
I think it's both, because I think we value and treasure our friends and our family and the people that can actually see us and hear us. Like actually see us. There are people who can't tell Rhiannon and Leyla and you and Amythyst and I apart by looking at our faces.
Yeah.
They can't tell us apart. It's happened at Native Daughters shows where we get off stage and someone runs up to me, Rhiannon, great set. I have a movie script I want you to look at. Like, a movie script? I'm not Rhiannon.
I'll take it.
Anyway, very flattering. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world, but I'm not her. Anyway, there are people that just literally can't see us. They can't differentiate. We're interchangeable.
Yeah.
We're just to their bias goes so deep. They don't know it. And bless their hearts, as we would say in the South. They don't mean harm a lot of the time, but it is so harmful to be seen as interchangeable and featureless, essentially. And I think part of having those kinds of interactions helps us value even more when we find our people who do see us and hear us as the unique individuals that we are, the unique artists that we are. And then we value each other even more. And it also solidifies, I think, our own purpose and strength. And a little bit of anger is good.
Yeah, I was going to say.
To help us kind of keep on our path
Yeah.
and with our purpose, and that I see, but this I sow.
Yes.
You know, I'm doing this.
Yes.
Great, you do that.
The
This is what I'm doing.
determination, the persistence. I do think that is central to what we do.
Yeah.
Without that, do we do it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And we have to have a kind of a resilience and an imperviousness and a resilience and a stubbornness to continue on an unpopular path.
Right.
And doing the art that we feel called to make anyway.
Yes. Yeah. And that persistence is our legacy, right? That's it's a central part of all the stories that we're telling.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that now it's enough. We've been doing it long enough and determinedly enough that there is this kind of now an interest and a kind of a sense of a greater community and a momentum and a movement, and that comes from multiple circles kind of rising at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, because it's a culture of trust and collaboration and, this kind of outsider mentality.
Yeah.
I'm curious how it feels to you to step into all the things that come with success and sort of a more commercial reach. And if you feel that you can keep that energy, if you feel that it's being threatened in any way.
I feel like I'm leaning into my circle even more, and the beauty of having some sort of accolades and notice and awards and just greater awareness come my way and a bigger platform has meant that I can step forward even more as a curator and bring forward more. There's so many brilliant artists that people need to hear.
I think this is a place where I really connect with, again, the history of our music and the ancestors, the female ancestors that we look to with so much gratitude and respect and admiration. But I think also I am guilty of romanticizing them. And when I look at Nina Simone as an activist, but I see that through the haze of the iconography of, the 60s. And then I realized, oh no, she was living in terrible times.
Yeah.
And what she was doing was speaking up with the voice that she had. And it wasn't, it wasn't beautiful in the way that the black and white photographs that we see, it looks noble and beautiful. No, it was just hard and scary and dangerous.
Hard and scary and dangerous. And it was survival.
Yeah.
She felt called to say what she did and do what she did to survive and to and for more black people to survive.
Yeah.
That, did you watch Summer of Soul? Mm-hmm. Her performance in Summer of Soul. I've watched it over and over and over again. And oh my God. And Mavis and Mother Mahalia.
Yeah.
I mean, just
but all of them, to be in that moment, I'm not sure we can even conceive what it really was.
And how powerful that was. And the fact that we didn't even get to see that till a couple of years ago, because thank goodness for Questlove going through those hours and hours and hours of footage and so that we get to see that and feel it. But because of racism and bias, everyone was interested in the Woodstock footage same summer.
Yes.
Nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Summer of Soul.
Yeah.
And
again, I think you can call that courage, but I don't call it courage. I call it necessity.
It's necessity and it's survival.
It's the expression that you have.
Yeah.
So you sing that
the
song.
urgency of life.
Yeah. You have a direct connection to that time through Joni Mitchell. You've been so involved in this sort of miraculous return that she's made to performing. And that must be something, I think I'm always scanning.
Yeah.
In the older generation for my role models. Who's going to show me the way to do this for a long time, to do it well, to do it in an evolving sense?
Joni.
Yeah, there you go. To touch that, I've worked with Judy Collins, the same thing. Although she tours too much.
I love
she works
her.
too hard.
I got to meet her at the Americana Awards in the UK. We got to meet and jam a little bit. And what a gorgeous human being. And she was the advocate for Joni at Newport. Joni couldn't get booked.
Right.
And it wasn't until Judy got to be a guest curator and she opened the door to Joni, to Leonard Cohen. They wouldn't book Leonard Cohen. They wouldn't book Joni Mitchell.
Yes.
And she booked them both. And that's how Joni and Leonard's friendship began. So hearing that story told first by Judy and then hearing Joni retell it at the Gorge from her perspective. I mean, just, it's been incredible. I play clarinet because of Joni Mitchell. My mom is a huge Joni Mitchell fan. My mom was a teenager when she had me. She grew up in Saskatoon, where Joni grew up. So from the same Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, same province, and wound up in Montreal because my grandmother got a fellowship and became a professor at the University of McGill. And so that's why my branch of the family was in Quebec, in Montreal. And my mom was a baby when she had me. You know, she was a kid. She was 17 years old. And I remember one of my earliest musical memories is sitting underneath the piano at my grandma's house and my mom playing along to the Ladies of the Canyon record that she was obsessed with at the time. And it was the song For Free, where I first heard the clarinet. It's a deeper cut off that record. I slept last night in a good hotel. Went shopping today for jewels. The wind rushed around in the dirty town. Children let out from the schools. And she's singing about, you know, having this high-rolling rock star life, and she hears this busker on the street who's playing clarinet and wanting to, you know, feeling so moved and wanting to go over and sing, but then the light changes and she's got to go and life is busy and nobody stops to listen to this beautiful clarinetist because he's never been on the TV and, you know, he's not commercially known. Yeah. And at the end of the song, there's this beautiful clarinet solo. And I remember it being stopped in my, like, holding my breath, listening to this sound. And that sound, like, imprinted on me.
Yeah.
That's why I play clarinet. And full circle,
yes,
Brandy Carlisle invites me into the magic circle of the Joni Jam.
Yeah.
The first time I got to be part of that was last year at Newport Folk Fest when it was a secret. And then this year we got to support Joni in her return as a headlining artist. Her first headlining show in 23 years. She sold out the Gorge in 10 minutes flat. And I got to play clarinet and sing harmonies and backups for her, sitting on a couch with Annie Lennox and Sarah McLachlan, because that's what happens when you hang out with Brandy Carlisle and Joni Mitchell. You're just like, oh, of course. You know, here we are.
It's very surreal and it's very
totally
real.
Surreal.
Right?
But also, we were all just the same kind of nerds.
Yes, no, exactly.
That's the other thing. Oh,
that's exactly.
You too,
yeah,
you know,
right.
And it's just so natural.
No, there's something
once
amazing
you get over the
about
shock.
that, about being in the room with an icon, with, you know, a goddess who's also going to go ride on a bus to Seattle tomorrow because that's what you do.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
It was just, oh, it was so joyful.
Yeah.
It was so, so joyful.
Yeah. I wanted to hear from you about this progression from the first record to the second record, because you have been specific in calling that not a trauma record, you know.
Very much not.
Right.
None of us get to choose the circumstances of our birth or the circumstances of our early childhoods or childhood's period. You know, but there comes mine happened to be blighted by that kind of abuse. But I was in Montreal. I was so lucky to be in Montreal because that is a city, art is at the heart of that city.
Yeah.
I had Jazz Fest. I had Caravana. I had Shakespeare in the Park. I had the most extraordinary public libraries. I had the Musée des Beaux-Arts, which is an incredible museum that was free to school kids. I had the Cirque du Soleil that we went to go see for $5 with my school when it, you know, back then.
Yeah.
And those things, those were lifelines. Hearing Oscar Peterson play for free in the park, hearing Freedom in his left hand on the Black Keys, you know, I got to hear Salif Keita and Umu Sangare at Jazz Fest. Like, I didn't know how extraordinary that was, but those were sounds and songs of freedom to me. So while my childhood was broken by abuse, I was built back up again by the art in my city and the community that I met there by. So I had all of these opportunities and things that fed my soul and my spirit because of the arts community in Montreal. And that's what I found my chosen family that way.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And you celebrate the strength in expression, the freedom that you find in expression.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that laid the groundwork for this new album, which is beautiful and unpin-downable.
Yes, that's my specialty.
And just you.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. I love the opening track.
Thank
and
you.
then, you know, that gets you into a place and then something else happens.
Yeah.
It's a ride.
It is a ride.
Yeah.
And I really was conscious with this record. I think Outside Child, I felt the need to really curate that experience. You know, I wrote voluminously in the liner notes, and I've talked a lot about it and written a lot about it. I felt the need to kind of explain and hold people's hand through it in a way. With the returner in the liner notes, I just wrote a haiku for each song, and that's it. And I wrote a little prologue and a little epilogue, just to acknowledge the circle of collaborators, because the story of the Returner is so much the story of the last 2 years of building this circle of amazing artists that I've been able to tour with and play with and collaborate with and record with, and that's so much a part of the story of the Returner. And I was, as we were writing the songs, I was envisioning the women who would embody them. I wrote, so it was, we were in conversation back and forth throughout the whole thing, and we continue to be, because of course the recording it's a snapshot, it's an archive of that first moment where they coalesce and become the recorded versions. But they're going to take on, and they already are, as we've started to preview some of them over the summer at festivals, taking on new life, and that life changes with each audience, because the audience is part of the circle work. I always, when we perform, we stand in a semicircle, shoulder to shoulder, because no one is incidental, no one's side, no one's background. We are conjuring the show and the set together, and the audience is part of that. Whoever chooses to come and engage with us is the other half of the circle. And so it's always new each time. And I love that. I'm hooked on that.
Yeah. No, we were talking about expansion. It's limitless, isn't it?
It's limitless. It's boundless.
And it stretches into the future.
Yeah.
Do you feel that about this record more than the first, that just the future of it and the
I hope
horizon?
I hope both will have it long. I hope that they will outlive me. I hope that people will continue to find value or find, a sense of being less alone in them, so that they'll serve that purpose for somebody, the way Tracy Chapman did for me, or Blue does for me, or all of Sinead O'Connor's. And, just there are so many records that continue to sustain me.
Yes.
And I hope that the records I make can live in that realm as well.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what I want to ask you. I want to ask you, having had this close connection with Joni Mitchell, with the women who came before us, who are living and who are gone.
Yeah.
What do you envision for yourself for the long term? What's Allison at 80?
I hope I'm like Mavis.
Yeah.
I hope I'm half as cool as Mavis when I'm 80. She's my role model for that woman knows how to live. She brings, and Joni does too. And Joni's had to struggle with so much, so many health challenges. She's come back from death 3 times. I hope I'm as courageous as her if I'm faced with near death. I hope I'm courageous as Joni and as Mavis. I hope I continue to make art and to share art and to be in community and to not shut myself off to the young artists that are coming up. They are both so extraordinary in that way, Joni and Mavis, of really loving on younger artists, taking us in, lifting us up, delighting in us. Joni at the Gorge saying the most beautiful clarinetist ever about me, which is such hyperbole and obviously not true, but was so thrilling to be told that by someone I love so much, who's the reason I play clarinet. So that I hope I'm like them. I hope I continue to have that kind of engagement with art and with community in the way that they do.
Yeah, I think that is all there is, isn't it?
I think so.
If you find your voice, and then that voice enables you to tell your story and others, and to invite others in, the possibilities are endless. It's infinity.
And just to keep the circles growing, keep supporting other artists. I'm doing that now. I try to do that with everything I do.
Yeah.